So we're going to give you today some of the background to this war, and tomorrow you're going to start reading a little bit. But before we do that, I want to give you a map of Europe and to give you an idea as to where certain countries are located, okay? Because we just talked about all these countries leading up to war. And remember, what's the easiest country in Europe to identify? Italy. I always think Italy. Maybe for you it's Great Britain, but I always go with the boot, Italy. Okay. And here's how the direction we go. If you go straight directly north, this small little blob in the middle of everything, I may know what country that is. Nope, not a bad guess. They're always neutral. Switzerland. Okay. Over here to the to the west of Switzerland, that big old blob is France. And then you've got over here, what country? Spain and Portugal. Good job. Good job. All right. And if we go back to Switzerland and we go directly north of it and to the east a little bit, what's this big blob? Germany. Okay. You got Belgium right here next to sandwiched between Germany and France, and then little Luxembourg. And you'll get up here Denmark and the Netherlands. And this is Austria Hungary. Over here's Russia. Those are your main countries. Great Britain's over here and Ireland over there. To give you an idea in a more colorized version, okay, right, you see that you've got the French Empire, Austria-Hungary in the big green section. You also have Romania, Bulgaria. But over here in the Middle East, they're going to play an important role as well. On the Arabian Peninsula, you get what's called the Ottoman Empire, all right? And they're going to be relevant to us, and they've been around for a long time. All right, we'll get to them later, though. You can see the Empire of Russia here. They call it the Empire of all Russias. It's wonderful. All right, so look, big countries, big empires are the theme heading into this conflict. But look, man, we got to tell you about how this conflict starts. Okay, so there's different causes for the war here. Okay, one of the biggest causes is going to be something that we refer to as the alliance system or alliances. Not trying to insult your intelligence. What is an alliance? What is it? An agreement, okay? And in this case, an agreement between countries, all right? There's going to be alliances that are going to be the cause for war, right? How will an alliance between nations contribute to a large-scale conflict? Literal? All right. If allies have to join in with a country, you go from a small conflict to a really large conflict. Like, let's say I got a beef with old Lester over there, okay? And Lester says, hey, you go to war with me, you're going to war with all my friends too. And he's like, I got Owens back here, I got Literal, I got Chloe. And he's like, I got one of the spores. So he's like, you go to war with me, you're going to war with all them. And I said, don't worry, bro. I got the rest of my tribe over here, right? So instead of just two people having an argument, now you got like 10 people having an argument. Okay? There are two big alliance systems in Europe, right? One's called the Triple Alliance. Who came up with that name, really? All right? Here's the three countries in the Triple Alliance. Look, you do not need to remember the leaders, but you definitely need to know the countries in the Triple Alliance. Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. We've talked about these political leaders, or at least two of these political leaders to an extent. Germany, yes, their flag at the time was red, white, and black. Austria-Hungary, it's the dual monarchy, if you remember. And look, Franz Joseph's getting a little on in his years at this point, right? And then you've got Italy. Victor Emmanuel III is the king of Italy at the time. And of course, we all know Kaiser Wilhelm. Oh, poor Wilhelm. We remember one arm shorter than the other. Okay, very angry man. What is it? Somebody have a question? Or are you just making fun of him? All right. So this is the Triple Alliance: Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. And it was a defense pact. If somebody messes with you, they mess with all of us. Don't worry, Hightower. I got your back. Best friends do that for each other, right? Right? Okay. All right. Now, the other major alliance is called the Triple Entente. Okay, the Triple Entente. And here are the three countries in the Triple Entente. I like to call this team red, white, and blue. Right? Great Britain, France, and Russia. Right? Again, you don't need to know the political leaders. but they're up there for you, and I'll show you one of the reasons why. I give you the pictures of them in a second. Britain has a constitutional monarchy. That's why they have a prime minister, David Lloyd George, and their monarch, King George V. France, their leader at the time, a gentleman by the name of George Clemenceau. I know his first name looks like George's, like with an S, but you don't pronounce the final consonant in French, right? And George Clemenceau, they called him Le Tigre, the tiger. He looks very unassuming with that cool mustache, but he is a guy, don't let him fool you. He's a very angry Frenchman. And finally, we have Tsar Nicholas II. Cool title, bruh. Now, those leaders, by the way, take a look real quick at Tsar Nicholas II and King George V. Take a good look at them. Notice anything about them? Yes, they both have a mustache, and it's a big mustache. Do these guys look alike? Yeah, I'd almost swear they were the same man. I mean, we have never seen them in the same room before. Oh, they are cousins, but it gets better. Okay, let me just go back. Oh yeah. All right. Kaiser Wilhelm. It's hard to tell from this picture because he has the strange mustache. But Wilhelm II, George V, and Tsar Nicholas II are all cousins. They all had the same grandma. Anybody know who their grandma was? Queen Victoria from Great Britain. Yeah, she's dead at this point. Okay, and her grandsons. And look, remember at the time, royalty would often intermarry with other countries to kind of forge alliances, right? And Victoria had several grandsons, and it turns out three of them are going to be really important leaders. Thank God she was dead. She might have died of shame if she knew they were all going to war, right? So you got this alliance here between Great Britain, France, and Russia. Oof, make for an awkward family reunion too. Okay. Now, alliance systems, you're going to drag other people into the conflict with you. Okay? Second cause, major cause for war, racism. Gosh, we always think of racism just in terms of American racism, black people and white people in America. But that's not just the case. Okay? Racism is going to play a major role in this conflict. Right? One group of people, the Slavs. Okay, Slavs, Slavs, not slobs like I don't pick up the stuff in my room slob. Slav. Ooh, who are the Slavs? There's like Slavic people. Everybody knows that. That's true. All right. What is the term the Slavs? What word does that look like? Slave. Okay, and they call them the Slavs because take a guess what they used to be. Slaves. And these Slavic people, you find them in Eastern Europe. Okay? These are Eastern Europeans. As you get close to Russia, Russia's included in that, but in Eastern Europe, like in Romania and Bulgaria, over here, you can see that they tell you the groups that are Slavs, like Russians, Bulgars, Macedonians, Serbs, and Croats. If they have a Russian sounding last name, they're Slavic. Okay? This race of people, this group of people from Eastern Europe. Smith, you look like you got a question. Well, how would they, like, what kind of slaves did they have? Are they going the same kind of were they all African Americans? Or okay, hold that thought. Okay. The Russian sounding last names, like for example like Pavlovich, all right, that's an example of a Slavic name. So the Slavs are over here in Eastern Europe, okay? And Slavic people are pretty pale, all right? So don't think of it in terms as racism as we see it, skin color based racism, okay? So these Slavic people are one important race of people over here in Eastern Europe. You see them, like I said, Bulgaria, Romania, and Russia, and even up through here in Eastern Russia, okay? So you got the Slavs. Now, the other major group of people that are playing here are what we refer to as the Germanic people. Ooh, take a guess where you find a lot of the Germanic people. Germany, how about that? They're found here in Germany and Austria-Hungary here in Central Europe. All right, now here's where things get tricky. Take a guess which group of people used to have enslaved the Slavic people? The Germanic people. All right. There is a lot of bitterness. Does this story sound familiar? One group, one race enslaved another, and later on, after they're free, they're still bitter and they don't like and trust the group that enslaved them in the past. That's the same story. That's what always happens when you have a group of people enslaved who get their independence. Okay? So the Slavs and the Germanic people, they don't like each other, and with good reason. They're bitter about it. Yes. Yes. You're like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. All right. So look, uh, let me ask you something. How does racism lead to conflict? Yeah, but you're skipping an important step here. Let me ask you this. What happens when one race literally thinks they're superior to the other? Keep going with it. They think they can overrule them or do what? Boss them around. All right? Because if you see a group of people as inferior to you, as not on your level, you have no qualms bossing them around or trying to tell them what to do. Yeah, it's almost like a parent-child. Remember when we talked about the Scramble for Africa? What's the word that Europeans, like we used to describe how they treated Africans? Starts with a P. Do you remember it? Paternalistic. Okay? So now imagine if you're the group that is seen as being inferior. How do you feel when that group tries to claim that they're superior to you? They're talking trash like they're hot stuff and they can boss you around. What is that? But what type of feeling does that build in you? Anger, resentment. Okay? And so those feelings are there and people lash out at each other. All right? So you got the alliance system. Now you got racism that's going to play a factor. Third factor, the buildup of arms. Okay? And I'm not talking about hitting the weight room. Okay? Somebody always mentions it. I'm like, I'm not talking about bicep curls or a deadlift or a bench press or a squat. Okay? The buildup of arms is referring to what? Weapons. Building more weapons, ships, devices that kill people. Look, in every single war, we find new and inventive ways to kill folks. Okay? And here's what we mean by the buildup of arms. If you look at this graphic, and you don't have to remember these numbers, but I wanted to put them up here to show you something. That in the years right before World War I starts, you see that major countries involved in the war, there's an increase in the percentage of resources that they're putting into their defense, right? And you look at France, 10%, Britain, 13%, Russia, 39%. And look at this number figure for Germany. And astonishing, they boost the amount of money they spend on their military by 73%. That's almost doubling what you spend on the military in 4 years, right? These countries are pouring more money into weapons, okay? And not just the same types of weapons, but newer, deadlier forms of technology. Now, how does the buildup of arms lead to conflict? All right, it can cause fear in people. Remember, we talked about that as a motivator in a lot of conflicts. And so, for example, Germany or Russia or Great Britain or France, any one of them sees that somebody, a neighbor or an enemy, building up their military, and so they feel threatened to some degree, and so they feel like they have to do the same, and it causes you to misperceive the other country. Right? Now, fun fact too, why is Germany the one that they're increasing their expenditures the most, like percentage wise? What is it? You're on the right track, but for not the right reason. Remember, Wilhelm II, why does he want to increase military spending? Right? Remember, they want to be a modern European, or excuse me, a modern world power and the dominant power in Europe. And so they feel like they have to project strength by building more in their military. And also, too, remember Who did they run over and destroy or defeat in a war to unify Germany in the first place? France. And they're like, hey, we know the French will probably try to get back at us at some point. So they felt like they had to do this. Okay? And Wilhelm wants to prove to the world that Germany is a modern nation. Okay? Now, also, too, there's a book that comes out in the late 1800s, early 1900s that's going to have an impact on military buildup. Right? Check out this stuffy looking fellow right here. He's an American sailor by the name of Alfred Thayer Mahan. Oh, look at that bald head. I like his tie, though. He looks very regal, like I am a dignified man. Okay? Mahan writes a very important book for the time, right? The name of the book, The Influence of Sea Power on History. If it's got that title, what do you think the topic is? Sea power. Be more specific for me. Boats. The Navy. Thank you. All right. And the Navy, look, if Mr. Newman were here, he would tell you that seagoing vessels are ships. All right. Anything that travels on a river is a boat. All right. The influence of sea power of history, it's about the importance of a navy. Okay. And here's what the argument he tries to make in this book. All right. This book, the concept behind it was all the great empires of the world in this time period from 1660 to 1805. He says, look, all the countries that were great powers in the world had a great what? Navy. And he said, look, the idea behind it, if you want to be a great world power, you need a top-notch Navy. That's the principal idea or the thesis of this book. Okay? And this book becomes wildly popular. Now, the funny thing is it's super popular at the time, but later on, like historians start looking at his book and they're like, actually, bro, there's been plenty of countries that are super strong and super powerful that didn't have a big time navy. All right. But the book becomes super popular. All right. In fact, take a guess where outside of the United States where it became the most popular. Not a bad guess, but no. Who needs an excuse to beef up their military and wants to create an awesome navy? Germany. Wilhelm II reads this book and he loves it so much that not only does he devote resources to his navy, he insists that a German translation of this book is on every single naval ship in Germany. Yes?
This might seem dumb, but like, how would the nations that are more inland, the like European area, how would they have a navy without using other countries?
Great question. And the answer is this. If you're a landlocked country, like for example, Switzerland is a landlocked country, they don't really have a navy. They don't need it. Okay. Now they have boats that patrol rivers within their territory, but usually landlocked countries don't bother. Now, here's an interesting point you brought up. Germany's going to spend a lot of time and resources on it, but does Germany have a whole lot of coastline? Not compared to other countries, right? But Germany says, this Mahan guy's onto something. So we got to pour a lot of resources into developing a navy, right? Another country latches onto this that they're going to be a little bit quiet during World War One, but they're really big in the Pacific area. Who was devoting a lot of resources towards modernizing? Japan. Okay, the Japanese developed a strong navy, and it made good sense for them as an island nation and wanting to be a dominant power in the Pacific. It made sense for them to build up a navy. All right, and so this American Mahan, his book is going to become wildly popular at the time, even though there's some major flaws with it. Right? Wilhelm's like, this is genius. Right? The buildup of arms. Right? Everybody's armed to the teeth because they're spending more money because they're afraid of what their neighbor might do and how much their neighbor's spending. Right? I can't get left behind. Right? Next thing that causes conflict, nationalism. Okay? Nationalism. We talked about this last chapter. Remind me, somebody, what's nationalism? Extreme pride in one's country to the point of arrogance. Okay? How does that lead to conflict? I'll give you a hint. It's similar to racism. Hold on. Let's start over here.
Well, you could think that any country that's against you is like the immediate enemy because you're better than any other country out there.
All right. Remember, if you believe your country is the best in the world and you have the best ways of living, How are you viewing other countries? As lesser, inferior. And if they're lesser or inferior than you, what do you think you should be able to tell them? What happens if I represent country A and we have a strong sense of nationalism and you represent country B and there's a dispute over a border? Who do I think should be calling the shots? Me, because we're the superior group of people. And what do you say to that? No, because you might think you're the superior group of people, and neither one wants to back down. Okay? Nationalism builds up this feelings of superiority based on a country. Yes.
This also work as like other things too. Like I'm just gonna use for example like Democratic or like not Democratic, but like the parties.
Yes, this is a really good question. She says, hey, what about can this concept be applied to political parties too? And yeah, there's another term, and this is one that's associated more with sociology. It's called tribalism. That this is my tribe, this is my group, and our group's better than your group. Okay? And yes, this definitely applies. That's a sticker worthy comment right there. Huh. You're welcome. All right. So ultimately, nationalism is going to drive conflict as well. So you've got all these underlying causes. So imagine for a second if you take all these pieces of wood and you throw some kerosene and some gasoline on it and then put some dry leaves on it, what's the only thing missing now? A spark, a fire, a flame, a match. All right. And that's what we're going to dump on it right here, yo. Okay? There's going to be one event that will trigger all these alliances, these racial sentiments, and these national sentiments too. Okay? Oh, man. All right? There's going to be an assassination. Oh, right here we have this gentleman in the picture with his family, the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, Franz Ferdinand. Oh, I know it's gonna be really sad. Okay, Franz Ferdinand is the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, literally meaning he's next in line to become emperor. Okay, Franz Joseph, the old emperor, when he kicks the bucket, it's going to be Franz Ferdinand who takes over the empire. That's wonderful. He's Franz Joseph's nephew. Right? He's next in line according to the line of succession. Now, things get a little bit messy. June of 1914, Franz Ferdinand is going to visit one of the cities in the empire. All right, the name of the city is up here. It's called Sarajevo. That's how you spell it, but it's pronounced Sarajevo. It looks like Sarah and then Jevo. Franz Ferdinand's going to visit this city. Okay, now this city is heavily populated, even though it's in Austria Hungary, it's heavily populated by Slavs. Okay, and do you think Slavs like living in a city that's ruled by Austria Hungary, a Germanic type people? No, they're really angry about this. Okay? Slavs are resentful, and they're really resentful when they hear that the Archduke is coming. Oh man, this is a recipe for disaster. Okay? And the Archduke doesn't know it, but in June, when he makes his plan to visit Sarajevo, he's being targeted for assassination by a terrorist group. This group is known as the Black Hand. Ooh, sounds menacing. Oh, yeah. He's being targeted for assassination. Right? Now, this is an absolutely bizarre scenario. First of all, the Black Hand, uh, it's a group of younger men, and they're made up of all Serbians. Okay? Uh, and Serbians are all Slavic people. Serbia is right next to Austria-Hungary. It's a Slavic country, and believe me, these Serbs who happen to be living in the city of Sarajevo, they're like, "Hey, we're out to get the Archduke. We're going to kill him, and we're going to make a statement to the world." Ooh, this should be fun. All right. So here's the plan that the Black Hand has in place here. Okay, when Archduke Franz Ferdinand, if you look at the map and you follow this little green arrow, okay, Franz Ferdinand's little car, his driver's supposed to take this route and take him to City Hall in Sarajevo. He's going to meet with the mayor. Now, the Black Hand members, there's 7 of them here who are they're going to be armed with pistols and they've got some hand grenades. They just called them kind of bombs back then, but It's really like the first type of hand grenade that you would get. Okay, so all of them are armed to some capacity, and the idea is that even if he drives by one of them and manages to live, the others would have a shot at him. Okay, so look, as he's driving through number one here, and they have their names by all of them. He gets up there close, and this guy's got one of these first grenades in his hand. And here's the thing about these little bombs or grenades. Fun fact: I'm hoping that you guys have never thrown a hand grenade before, but when you pull the pin on a hand grenade and like let the lever go, does it blow up right then? No, because it'd blow up in your hand, and that would be bad. Right? There's a fuse on it, and so it always has a delay of a few seconds before it's going to go off. So you got time to chuck it somewhere. Right? The first grenades that they were making, the delay was a little bit longer. All right. So this guy gets super excited. That's great. We're having a fire drill right now for sections A and G. All right. Number one here gets really excited when the Archduke drives by and he pulls out his bomb or his little grenade and he chucks it at the car really fast. Okay. The problem is this, though. The driver sees it, and because of the delay, he has time to pull away and drive away. Okay. So the bomb explodes, and a guy in another car gets hurt, but the Archduke is fine. Okay. And his wife was with him in the car, and they're like, oh, they're startled. And so they go along the route here, right? And they keep driving. They go ahead and finish their route, and they go to see the mayor of Sarajevo, all right? And so the Archduke goes and talks to the mayor, and he's really upset. He's like, you know what just happened to me? There was an assassination attempt. I'm really upset, blah, blah, blah. Gives him up and down the river, okay? And the Archduke wants to go back the same route. Before he leaves town, he wants to visit the injured man in the hospital, and he's like, we'll just get out of town the same route. And they planned on going back the same way, okay? Now, here's where a little bit of a strange twist of fate comes in, okay? And also a strange idea here, too. These guys, when they first tried to assassinate the Archduke and it didn't work, like the rest of them had just frozen up. They saw that the bomb went off and nothing happened, and they just got cold feet and they backed out. Okay, so they all go. Some of them go home, except this guy, number 5, Gavrilo Princip. Okay, and Princip decides to go to a local deli, a little sandwich shop here on the corner. And he's like, "Hey, the assassination didn't work out, but why not have some lunch? You know, soup and a sandwich, right?" When the Archduke's car is coming back, his driver takes a wrong turn up this street, and the car stalls out and stops right in front of the deli where Gavrilo Princip is having his lunch. Princip looks up. He realizes that the Archduke is out in his car, grabs his pistol, walks up to the car, fires 2 shots, and he shoots the Archduke right here in the throat. Oh, it gets way more tragic here, too. He's supposedly holding his throat when he looks over at his wife and says, Sophie, live for the children. Oh, isn't that so sweet and romantic? Sadly, though, Sophie got hit by a bullet too, right? And Sophie's not going to make it. Neither is their unborn child. Oh, yeah, she was preggers. What are y'all laughing at? He dies, and Sophie, look, the story's even more romantic than that. He was royalty, but when he married her, she was a commoner. And part of the agreement in order to marry her, he had to agree that their children could never take the throne because he married a commoner. And he said, I'll do it anyway. He married for love. Isn't that sweet? No, except they're both dead now. God, that's awful, right? Gavrilo Princip is quickly arrested. He's tried. He's convicted. He's going to prison. He was only 19 when he killed the Archduke, okay? And he doesn't know it, but this is going to set in motion some events that are going to cause a massive, massive war in Europe, right? Now, here's what's going to happen. All right, ignore that bell. The Archduke is dead, so is his wife. Austria-Hungary is justifiably upset, okay? But it's not good enough. They say it's not good enough that they captured Gavrilo Princip and the other members of the Black Hand. They're like, that's not good enough. They want more people to be held accountable. And remember, all of these people of the Black Hand, where are they from? What is it? Nope. Serbia. They're all Slavic people, which they hate. They're all from Serbia, and they hate them too. And so the Archduke is dead, and Austria-Hungary blames Serbia for it. Okay? And they're like, we're going to take out our anger on poor little Serbia. Does this seem wrong? Oh, yeah. It gets worse. Okay? Now, the story of the Archduke dying and his famous last words and his wife being dead too, it reaches all over the world. And here's where Germany is going to get involved. The Kaiser, he is so moved by this romantic story, and he's upset at the assassination of a royal. Okay? And so he decides, interrupted. We keep getting interrupted here. All right. So ultimately, Austria-Hungary says we're going to hold Serbia accountable, and Kaiser Wilhelm calls up Austria-Hungary and says, "Hey, I feel really bad about what happened to the Archduke. You have my unconditional support for whatever you want to do to punish Serbia." All right. He gives them what we refer to as the blank check. All right. The promise of unconditional support. Hey, Riley, what's your favorite store to shop at? What is it? American Eagle. What if I gave you a check and wrote American Eagle's name on it and just left the amount blank? Would you buy a lot of stuff? Probably. You'd be like, you're broke, Scully. So just whatever I'm going to spend everything you got. Okay. Kaiser Wilhelm from Germany calls up Austria-Hungary and says, "Hey, what Serbians did to you was so wrong. You have my unconditional support. Whatever you want to do, we'll back you 100%. Okay. So now Austria-Hungary says we got the power of Germany behind us too, and it's going to get crazy. And we're going to pick up with that tomorrow. What is it? Yes, and that's where the alliance is going to come in. And also tomorrow you're going to see racism comes in as well.